Welcome to the Idiot's Guide. I'm Mackie Hall, and today we're going to be talking about animating with Adobe Illustrator and Adobe Animate. For those of you who don't know, Adobe Animate is a powerhouse application designed for building interactive animations for video, games, and the web. With it, you can bring animation and banner ads to life, create avatars, and create animated and interactive infographics. You can also publish to multiple platforms on just about any format. That includes everything from an animated GIF to a high-end video format. Combine this with Adobe Illustrator, and you've got easy access to be truly creative. For this 8-part beginner tutorial, we're going to learn how to create this simple web tutorial using Illustrator and Animate. Here are the steps. Part 1, let's get started. Building Illustrator art, file setup, and importing. Part 2, create a looping animated symbol. Part 3, using motion tweens for basic animation. Part 4, adding stop actions. Part 5, creating buttons and button-based actions. Part 6, advanced buttons, basic button hover animation and linking to outside URLs. Part 7, publishing options for your web ad. Part 8, importing into an adaptive web page. This is part 3, using motion tweens for basic animation. And a quick note, if you're coming in at one of the latter stages of the tutorial, be sure you start at step 1. That's always going to be the most helpful, and that'll get you on the path to creativity the fastest. For this piece, we're offering an Illustrator file down below or in your Canvas page to get started. Let's go. All right, now that we've completed step 2, create a looping animated symbol, we're ready for step 3, using motion tweens for basic animation. To understand the steps in this tutorial, let's jump on over to our storyboard. In this piece, we're going to build out all of the steps of the animation with the exception of the stop and button actions. Those are saved for future tutorials. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to run through the animations from panel 1 through panel 3 back to panel 2. That's going to be the loop that we're going to run for this animation. Again, we're not worrying about stopping or starting. We'll address those at a later time. Note that on panel 1, all we've got are the clouds and the sky. After panel 1, if we look at panel 2, people will scroll up from the bottom first, and then the intro sign and click here button will scroll up. Next, the intro sign and click here button will scroll up from the bottom. In order to get to panel 3, the intro sign and click here button will scroll back off the stage from the bottom. Once the intro sign and click here button are off the stage, we'll move to panel 3, where sign 2 and the Visit CDC website button, as well as the close button, will scroll onto the stage from the bottom. Once they're on the stage in their final position, they'll scroll back off the bottom, and then we'll go right back to panel 2 with the intro sign and click here button scrolling back up from the bottom. Note again that we're not looking at stop or button actions. Those are saved for later videos. Instead, we're focusing on the movement of our big elements. With that in mind, let's jump right back over to Animate. All right, now that we've done that, let's go ahead and set up panel 1. Again, we're only going to have the sky and the clouds visible. The way we select our elements, we can select our elements in a number of ways. The first way to do it will be to click on the stage. We can click on all of the elements, holding our Shift key to select multiple elements, and either arrowing them down, I'll undo that, or dragging them down off the stage, just like that. I'll undo that once again. Oftentimes that works. However, it's imprecise and it's tough to get all of the elements at one time. A better way to do that is to go to the timeline and select the specific layers that you want to move. When you select the layers, all of the elements on that layer will be selected by default. Let me show you what I mean. If I go onto my timeline, I can select either my layer and move it. I'll undo that. Or I can select multiple layers by holding my Shift key to select multiple layers that are away from each other. I'll deselect that. Or I can hold my Control key to select layers that are not layered on top or next to each other. Let's deselect that. What I can do if I want is I can go from top to bottom holding my Shift or Control key. In this case, since I want to select everything from button all the way down to headlines while excluding clouds and sky, all I need to do is go to my top layer, select that, hold my Shift key, and select headline. With that in mind, everything is selected. I can also go onto my timeline and do the same thing. Note I'll deselect it here. I can go back up to my button layer, select my button, and then hold my Shift key and click on my headline layer on the timeline, and all of those elements are selected once again. Now that I've selected all of the elements I want to move, all I need to do is drag them off the stage. The most efficient way for me to drag something off stage is to use my directional keys. What I can do is either arrow them down if I want to move it down. In this case, I do, and it'll move it slowly. Let me undo that. Or I can hold my Shift key and elements will move in a space 10 times greater than if I had done just the directional keys alone. Again, I'll hold my Shift key and arrow down with my directional keys. Note how quickly they move. Let me undo that. I'll show you something else. Now, if I zoom out, I can press Control- to do that. I'll still move at 10 times faster holding the Shift key, but the space is going to be incrementally larger. Take a look. Note how much further I move with each click. Now that I'm done with that, I can size up and then bring my stage back to center by hitting Control-0. There we go. That's exactly what I want for panel 1. Let me go ahead and save that right now. Once again, for panel 2, what we want to do is first we want to bring our subjects onto the stage, and then we want to bring the button and the headline on stage. So let's start with the subjects first. Now that we've moved our elements off stage and we're looking at our next 2 panels in our animation, this is as a good time as any to set our animation length. The way we do that is we think about first how long we want our animation to be. I know that my animation without stop is going to be no longer than 3 seconds, so I'll make my animation 3 seconds in length. The way I do that is, on my timeline, I go over to 3 seconds and I'll click on my button layer. Notice that is 72 frames. The next thing I will do is I will go down to my sky layer holding my Shift key and I'll click on that. Once I've done that, I want to add the frames. Here's how I do that. I'm going to right click on any of the frames I've selected and I'm going to select Insert Frame or F5. Notice that my timeline has expanded to 3 seconds. Now with that in mind, we can start panel 2. Let me deselect. Note for panel 2, I want my subjects to come up from the bottom, and that movement, and all movements for that matter, is going to take a ½ second. So for that, what I'll do is I'll go to my subjects layer and I'll click on my 12th frame. There you go. The next thing I want to do, because I know I want my subjects to be on frame at that point, is I'm going to right click on that frame and I'm going to select Insert Keyframe. I can either right click on it or I can go on my timeline, above my timeline, and select Insert Keyframe. I find it easier just to click and right click. Next thing I want to do is arrow my subjects into their final position. Here's how I do that. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit, just like that. And then I'm going to hold my Shift key and I'm going to arrow my subjects into position. Again, all I'm going to do is hold my Shift key and use my directional keys to bring my subjects to position. Looks good right there. Let's go ahead and deselect. Now, if I go through my timeline, watch what happens. So my subjects pop up from the bottom. I'll drag this down a little bit further so you can see what happens. All they're doing is moving from their original position and snapping to their final position. How do I create a tween? A tween is that movement between keyframes. Here's how we do it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my subjects layer between the two keyframes. Next, I'm going to right-click and I'm going to select Create Classic Tween. You'll get a warning here asking for confirmation that you want a tween. Select OK and you'll be just fine. Now that I've done that, notice the intermittent position of my subjects on my stage. Now if I drag from frame 1 to frame 12, notice that they are moving. Let's see how it looks on the full-size stage. What I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in, and then I'm going to press Ctrl-0 to bring my stage center on the stage panel. There we go. Let's go ahead and give it a test by pressing either Enter or pressing our play button on our timeline. Well, that looks pretty good, except I want it to ease in. I want my subjects to slow down and stop on my timeline. How am I going to do that? Well, here's a way. All we need to do is click on our subjects and then click on Classic Ease. Once we've done that, let's select Custom. Once we've selected on the timeline, all we need to do is click on Effect where it says Classic Ease. And then we've got a bunch of options. We can select Ease In, which depending on what you select, will ease the element in or out in a number of different ways. Now, what we want to do is we want to ease our element out just like that. Right now we can select from a bunch of defaults, but I want to share with you something that I use a lot, which is the custom eases. Let's go ahead and click on that. And note that I've got a couple of eases already that would work just fine. In this case though, I want to create a couple of new ones for our specific project. So we'll click New, and we'll double click New. Note that our custom ease pops up. In this case, we'll call our new tween Project Ease In. Once we've named it, let's play with our ease. Here's how we do that. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to click on our first button. Now we can add buttons just like that, but in this case we don't need to. We want to keep it simple. So for this case, we're going to click on our first anchor point. Notice if I do that, handle pops up there. We can grab and move that as we see fit. In this case, what I want to do is I want to drag it up just about like that. I think that's fine right there. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my second anchor point, and I'm going to drag my anchor flat. Take a look how. That looks pretty good. If we want to further customize, we can always add anchor points as we see fit. Now we don't need to do that, so I'll eliminate that. That looks pretty good right there, so I'll save and apply it. Notice that the effect now for that tween is Project Ease In. Let's test it one more time, see what it looks like. Notice how our subjects ease onto the stage. That's exactly what we want. Now that we've done that, let's go ahead and move our button and our headline. Let's jump over to frame 13. Let's click on our button. That looks good right there. And then we're going to select our headline. Because they are away from each other, we're going to use our Control key to select that along with our button. I'll click there. And let's go ahead and create a keyframe. Again, with both of them selected, all we need to do is right-click on one and select Insert Keyframe. Looks good right there. Now that we've done that, let's go to 1 second. Let's do the same thing here. We're going to select our button, hold down our Control key, and select Headline. Once we've done that, we'll right-click again and select Insert Keyframe. Now that we've done that, we can move our elements into position. Let's zoom out to see how they're going to move. You can see most of it, and let me drag down so we can see everything as they come in. Looks good right there. Again, we're going to hold our Shift key, and we're going to arrow up. As we're arrowing up, notice how layers work. Click here lands in front of the subjects, and the headline lands behind the subjects. That looks pretty good right there. As you know now, we need to create our tweens. And here's how we're going to do that. Again, we're going to click anywhere on button between the keyframes, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to hold our control key and we'll click on headline. Again, we've selected the areas between the keyframes. All we need to do now is right click on any of those areas selected and we'll select Create Classic Tween. Click OK. And we've got our tweens created. Take a look at how it looks when we test. Looks good. The only thing that's missing from the movement on button and headlines is, you guessed it, our ease. So let's add that custom ease we created for subjects to those two areas. Once again, we're going to click on button. We'll hold our control key and click on headline. And then we're going to click on classic ease. Once that pops up, let's click on custom and let's double click on project ease in. Now that we've done that, notice if I click on any of the tweens, they will have the custom effect in. Let's see what it looks like when we do a test play. We'll go back to first frame. We'll click play. Looks good. That's perfect. Let's go ahead and finish panel 2 by pulling those two elements back off frame. What we're going to do is we're going to go to 1.5 seconds. That is frame 36. And we'll create a new keyframe for button and headline. We'll click on button, again, hold our control key, select headline, right click, and click on insert keyframe. Once we've done that, let's use our down directional key and our shift key again to move those elements off frame. Looks good. Let's create our motion tween. Again, clicking anywhere between the two keyframes. We'll hold our control key to select it again. We're going to right click and select Create Classic Tween. Let's go ahead and test. Note that we need to create a new easing now for the movement out. Here's how we do that. Once again, we'll select our new tweens. Hold our control key to select both of them. And this time around, again, we're going to click on Classic Ease. We'll select Custom, and we're going to click on New. Let's double click. This time around, we're going to call our new ease Project Ease Out. This time around, we want to have it roll off slow and accelerate out of picture. Here's how we do it. We're going to click on our first anchor point. We'll grab the handle and we'll drag it to a horizontal position just like that. Next, we'll grab our second anchor point. We'll take the handle and move it vertically. Don't need to do it all the way. I think that looks good just there. Let's save and apply. And note that it is applied to both of the tweens. It says Project Ease Out. Let's test one more time by going back to our first frame and let's hit enter. Excellent. We have completed panel 2. Next thing we want to do is we want to move our sign layer, our sign link layer, and our sign link close layer into position. We can do that really easily by going to frame 37 and we'll click on sign link close. And because they're next to each other, we can hold our shift key and click on sign. Now that we've done that, let's right click and select insert keyframe. Once we've done that, we want to move it into position a half second later. So we'll go to 2 seconds. We'll click on sign link close. We'll hold our shift key and select sign. Once done with that, we'll right click again, select insert keyframe. There we go. That looks pretty good right there. Now that we've done that, let's save ourselves some time and go on over to 2.5 seconds. That would be to 60 frames. And we'll click there and we'll click on sign link close, then hold our shift key and click on sign. From here, we're going to right click again and select insert keyframe. This is a bit of a cheat this time because what we're doing is we're setting the positions for the in and out. Notice that we have not done any movement yet. We're going to do that right now by going back to our keyframes at 2 seconds, and we'll select Sign Link Close through Sign one more time. Again, we'll click on Sign Link Close, we'll hold our Shift key and click on Sign. Now that we've selected that, let's move those into position on the timeline. The way we do that once again is we'll hold our Shift key and arrow up until they are in position. Looks good right there. Now that we've done that, let's go ahead and insert our tweens. Let's start with our move in. We'll click again on Sign Link Close. We'll hold our Shift key, click on Sign, we'll right click, and we'll select Create Classic Tween. Click OK. And now that we've done that, let's go ahead and create our tweens for when our elements are moving off stage as well. So let's go ahead over to any frame between our last 2 keyframes. We'll click on Sign Link Close. Again, hold our Shift key and click on Sign. Let's right click and select Create Classic Tween. Click on OK, and let's go ahead and test it. Go back to our first frame, we'll hit Enter. Looks pretty good with the exception of our ease in and ease out. So now that we've got those set, all we need to do is select our ease in for the movement in and our ease out for the movement out. Let's do it. Once again, let's click on any frame between the keyframes at Sign Link Close. We'll hold our Shift key, click on Sign to select all the layers, and let's click on Effect where it says Classic Ease. Let's click on Custom, and let's double click on Project Ease In. There we go. Let's do the same thing for the movement out. We'll click on Sign Link Close. We'll hold our Shift key and select Sign. And this time again, let's click on Classic Ease. Once again, let's click on Custom, but this time around, let's double click on Project Ease Out. That's the custom motion effect that we created for the movement out. Let's double click on that. All right, let's go back to frame 1 and let's give it a test. Looks good. Let's go ahead and size up our stage and bring our stage to center. The way we do that is we hit Control+, and if our stage is not to center, we click on Control-0. That'll bring our stage to center. Let's go ahead and do another test. Again, go back to frame 1. Let's hit Enter. Looks good. Let's save and test on our web browser. All we need to do to test on our web browser is to go to Control, Test, or select Control-Enter. This will immediately open it in your web browser. Looks good. That is exactly what we're looking for. Let's close it up and go back to Animate. Let's open up our timeline. In our future tutorials, we will add our stop actions and our button actions. With that being said, we are done. All right, you've completed step 3. Get on with the next step. All right, if you have any questions, comments, or critiques, leave them in the comments section below. Otherwise, throw me a like. I'd really appreciate that. Otherwise, subscribe. I'd appreciate that just a little bit more. We'll see you next time. See you.